What if the one thing that's been holding you back isn't your past, isn't your pain, isn't your circumstances, but the truth you're terrified to face? What if the reason you feel stuck is because you've been running from the exact moment meant to set you free? We spend our whole lives pretending we're fine, acting strong, carrying wounds we never admit we have. But what if the healing you've been begging for has been standing right behind the door you refuse to open? What if the peace you want isn't waiting in the future, it's waiting in the part of you you've been avoiding? Imagine this: every pattern you repeat, every person you attract, every emotion that overwhelms you, all of it is a message your heart has been whispering for years, hoping one day you'd stop, breathe, and finally listen. What if today is that day? What if this is the moment you stop hiding from your truth and start honoring it? The moment you stop waiting for closure and start creating it? The moment you stop blaming yourself and start freeing yourself? Because what if, and hear this deeply, the life you've been dreaming of starts the moment you decide to feel instead of fear, face instead of flee, and heal instead of hide? Stay with me. This might be the 1 minute that changes everything. What if the very thing you've been avoiding is the exact doorway to the healing you've been begging for? What if the pain you've been running from is not your enemy, but the lesson you were meant to face? Most people think healing begins with time or distance or strength, but the real truth is far more shocking. Healing doesn't start when the pain fades. It starts the moment you finally acknowledge it. And that's the part almost everyone skips. We've been taught to be strong, to move on, to keep going, so we become experts at pretending. We smile when our heart is breaking, we stay busy to avoid thinking, and we convince ourselves that ignoring something makes it smaller. But the mind doesn't work like that. The heart doesn't work like that. The pain you don't acknowledge doesn't disappear. It becomes louder. It grows roots in your habits, your reactions, your relationships. It hides behind anger, behind silence, behind the walls you call personality, but are actually protection. What if the reason you feel stuck is because your unacknowledged pain has been pulling the strings from behind the curtain? You think you're choosing your actions, but the truth is, your old wounds are choosing for you. Every time you overreact to small things, every time you push people away, every time you sabotage something good, that's your unhealed self speaking. And the most shocking part, you can live your entire life this way without ever realizing it. Acknowledgement is terrifying because it forces you to confront the truth. Something hurt you, something changed you, something shaped you more than you wanted to admit. But the moment you say, yes, this affected me, you take away its secret power. You stop being controlled by something you refuse to look at. You stop handing your past the steering wheel of your future. What if the peace you've been craving is sitting quietly behind the door you refuse to open? What if your breakthrough doesn't require strength, just honesty? The moment you acknowledge the wound, it stops being a monster and becomes a message. It stops being chaos and becomes clarity. Healing isn't about erasing the past, it's about finally facing it long enough to understand it, because the pain you name is the pain you can finally release. What if the armor you think is protecting you is actually the prison keeping you stuck? What if the walls you've built around your heart, the silence, the distance, the I don't care attitude, are not signs of strength, but symptoms of unresolved pain? Most people don't realize how much they're carrying because emotional armor feels safe. It feels smart. It feels necessary. The most shocking truth is that the same armor you created to survive is now stopping you from living. Think about it. You weren't born guarded. You weren't born afraid to trust, afraid to feel, afraid to open up. Something happened, someone disappointed you, someone broke your trust, someone hurt you deeply enough that your heart whispered never again. And from that moment, you started building walls, not brick by brick, but betrayal by betrayal. What if that armor has been shaping your decisions more than your actual desires? You push people away before they get too close. You pretend you're fine so no one asks questions. You choose loneliness over vulnerability because at least loneliness doesn't leave. You convince yourself that emotions are weakness when in reality, avoiding them is what's breaking you. Shockingly, emotional armor doesn't just protect you from pain. It also blocks love, joy, connection, and growth. You can't selectively numb. When you shut out hurt, you also shut out healing. When you avoid feeling, you avoid living. And the scariest part, that armor becomes so familiar that you forget it's even there. You think it's your personality. You think you're just like this, but deep down, you know you're not. You know there's a version of you hidden underneath, softer, more open, more alive. What if the person you've been trying to become is trapped behind the person you became to survive? What if the real transformation isn't about learning something new, but unlearning the walls that were built out of fear? The mind will tell you that letting down your guard is dangerous, but your heart knows the truth. Healing only happens when the barriers come down. Your emotional armor was never meant to be permanent. It was a temporary shield that turned into a lifelong cage. And until you loosen your grip on it, you'll keep feeling stuck, disconnected, and misunderstood, because you cannot receive with closed hands, and you cannot heal with a closed heart. What if the real reason you keep repeating the same painful patterns is because you've been treating symptoms instead of healing the root? What if every argument, every breakup, every emotional trigger you experience isn't random, but a message from a deeper wound you've been refusing to look at? Most people don't realize this, but your life keeps echoing the same lessons until you finally pay attention to the source. And the shocking truth is, the thing hurting you the most isn't happening now. It happened long ago and you never healed it. We live in a world where people try to escape their pain in the easiest ways possible. Distractions, overthinking, overworking, scrolling, pretending. We slap band-aids on bleeding wounds and then wonder why the pain returns stronger. You get angry at small things, not because they matter, but because something inside you is already hurting. You fall for emotionally unavailable people, not because they're meant for you, but because they match a wound you've never resolved. You fear abandonment, not because people always leave, but because someone important once did. What if the reason your healing hasn't worked yet is because you've been trying to fix the branches while ignoring the roots? You calm your anxiety, but you don't face where it came from. You try to control your reactions, but you don't explore why they exist. You silence your anger, but you never ask what it's trying to tell you. The problem is not your behavior, it's the buried emotions driving that behavior. And here's the most shocking part. Your mind remembers everything you tried to forget. It stores every betrayal, every heartbreak, every harsh word, every moment you felt unworthy. And until you face those memories, they will continue to run your life in the background. Not consciously, but silently, powerfully, consistently. What if the life you're living right now is not the life you want, but the life your unhealed wounds are shaping for you? What if your fears, your insecurities, your doubts are not personality traits, but emotional warnings? Healing begins the moment you stop asking, what's wrong with me? And start asking, where did this begin? Because every pattern has a beginning, and every beginning can be rewritten. You don't break cycles by changing your actions. You break cycles by understanding the wound beneath them. And the moment you face the root, everything above it starts to heal. What if the biggest weight you're carrying isn't the pain someone else caused you, but the pain you keep causing yourself through guilt and self-blame? What if the real prison isn't your past, but the way you punish yourself for it every single day? Most people don't realize this, but one of the most shocking truths about healing is that nothing keeps you stuck longer than refusing to forgive yourself. Not forgiving others, forgiving yourself. We grow up thinking that being hard on ourselves makes us responsible, disciplined, or mature, but all it really does is drain the life out of us slowly. You replay scenarios in your head, punishing yourself for things you can't go back and change. Words you said, choices you made, mistakes you regret, people you lost, opportunities you missed, and every time you relive them, you tell yourself the same silent message, I should have known better. What if the heaviness you feel isn't from the pain itself, but from holding it in for so long? Emotions are meant to move through you, not stay trapped inside you. When you avoid feeling something, it doesn't disappear. It stores itself in your body, in your chest, in your stomach, in your behaviors, in your reactions. It shows up as anxiety, irritability, overthinking, emotional shutdowns. You think you're fine, but your body has been screaming the truth you refuse to acknowledge. And here's the most shocking part. The emotions you avoid become the patterns you repeat. You don't just avoid pain. You avoid love because love requires vulnerability. You avoid connection because connection requires honesty. You avoid opportunities because opportunities require courage. Before you know it, your whole life becomes smaller, safer, more controlled, but also emptier. What if your breakthrough doesn't come from being tougher, but from being more honest with what you feel? Vulnerability isn't falling apart, it's opening the door to healing. Every tear you refuse to shed becomes a brick in the wall between you and the life you want. Every emotion you silence becomes a memory that never gets to heal. You're not stuck because there's no solution. You're stuck because you're terrified to feel something you survived once and don't want to face again. But the truth is, the moment you allow yourself to feel it fully, it loses its power over you. What if the freedom you've been searching for doesn't come from avoiding emotions, but from finally allowing them to move through you? Because the pain you feel transforms. But only when you stop running from it. What if the closure you've been waiting for is never going to arrive on its own? What if the apology you're hoping for, the moment of clarity you expect, the change you want to see, never comes unless you create it? Most people believe time heals everything, but the shocking truth is that time doesn't heal. It only hides. And the wound you don't actively close becomes the wound that silently shapes your entire life. We grow up hearing, give it time, as if days and months have magical powers. But time doesn't heal emotional pain. It only buries it deeper until it shows up again in your choices, your relationships, your reactions. You think you moved on, but then someone says one sentence, one memory resurfaces, one situation repeats, and suddenly you're right back at the beginning. That's because nothing changes until you choose closure. Not time, not distance, not distractions. What if the reason you're still stuck is because you keep waiting for someone else to fix what broke inside you? You wait for someone to finally understand you. You wait for the past to make sense. You wait for people to return what they took from you. But closure is not something you receive. It's something you decide. It's the moment you stop rewriting the story and finally accept what happened, how it happened, and who it revealed. Here's the most shocking part. Your healing is delayed every time you keep replaying scenarios in your mind. You aren't just remembering the hurt. You're reliving it. Your brain can't move on from a story you keep retelling. And deep down, a part of you is scared that letting go means losing something important. But holding on is what's actually destroying you. What if letting go isn't losing, but finally choosing yourself? Closure isn't a conversation. Closure is an action. It's deleting the message you keep rereading. It's blocking the person you hope will change. It's accepting the fact that they won't apologize. It's acknowledging that you deserved better. You don't heal by waiting for justice. You heal by giving yourself peace. Most people think closure is about getting answers, but it's really about ending the question. It's about waking up one day and deciding the past no longer gets to control the rest of your life. What if the life you've been dreaming of is already available, but you can't enter it because you're still standing at the door of a chapter that ended long ago? At the end of the day, healing isn't a mystery. It's a choice to stop running from the truth, a choice to take off the armor you've outgrown, a choice to stop treating symptoms and finally face the root, a choice to forgive yourself for being human, a choice to feel what you've been avoiding, and a choice to create the closure you've been waiting for others to give you. Your past shaped you, but it does not have to define you. The moment you decide to confront what's been controlling you, that's the moment you break the cycle. Healing isn't about forgetting what hurt you. It's about reclaiming the power it once took from you. And today, right now, you have that power. Good luck, thank you message. Thank you for listening, for feeling, and for showing up for yourself in ways most people never do. Healing takes courage, and the fact that you're here means you already have what it takes. I'm wishing you strength for the hard moments, clarity for the confusing ones, and peace for every step ahead. Good luck on your journey. You're not just moving forward, you're rising. Thank you.